You know that feeling. You see someone absolutely so maybe they launched like a rocket ship of a company or they're just crushing it. And it just seems, I don't know, easier for them.
Oh, yeah.
Like they caught a lucky break or they have some kind of inside track you don't.
That's an incredibly common reaction, definitely. We tend to see the outcome, the big success.
Yeah.
And we think it's either just relentless effort, the little grind culture thing, or maybe, just pure luck.
Right.
But you're right. There's often a much deeper story there. Different factors are usually at play that we don't always see at first glance.
Exactly. And that's precisely what we're diving into today. We've been looking into some really fascinating insights. They come from research and discussions around a particular book that challenges that whole success is just hard work idea. So our mission really for this deep dive is to pull out the key takeaways, the most valuable bits from this material to help you understand not just these other factors, but maybe how to spot and even, leverage your own sort of hidden advantages.
It's really about reframing how you look at it. It moves the conversation beyond just the stuff you directly control, like your effort, learning new skills. And it brings in all those environmental things or inherent traits or just the circumstances that give people different starting points, makes the journey less uphill for some.
Okay, let's use an example the source uses. It might bring up that exact feeling we were just talking about. The story of Evan Spiegel, founding Snapchat.
Right.
So here's someone, born into serious wealth, went to elite private schools. His parents had connections that apparently smoothed his path into Stanford, great location for tech, obviously.
Prime location.
And those same connections helped him get early investors when Snapchat was, well, just an idea.
It's a really powerful illustration because, honestly, looking at that story, it can feel incredibly discouraging, can't it?
Totally.
You might immediately start comparing your own background, your own situation, and think, well, hang on, I don't have any of that. No rich family, no elite network. How could I possibly compete or achieve something like that?
Right. It just feels fundamentally unfair, like the game was rigged before you even sat down to play.
And that exact feeling is, well, it's central to what this book is getting at. It argues that it's natural to focus only on the visible effort, the fair play part, while completely missing the big circumstances that acted as built-in advantages for someone. The core idea they put forward is this. Success isn't just fair play, your effort. It's actually fair play multiplied by what they call unfair advantages.
So effort is vital, but it's not the only variable in the equation. And these unfair advantages act like multipliers.
Exactly.
The authors, Ashley and Hassan Kuba, they're entrepreneurs from the UK. And what's interesting from the sources, they came from very different backgrounds themselves, immigrant families from Pakistan and Iraq.
Right.
And that experience seems to give them a kind of unique perspective on navigating challenges, building success, maybe without those obvious starting advantages.
Yeah. It brings that necessary balance, I think. They obviously understand the need for hard work, the fair play side, but their own journeys really highlight just how impactful those external factors, the often invisible ones, can truly be.
Okay, let's try and pin these terms down, though. Fair play. That's the stuff you probably focus on most, right? Your effort, the hard work, the skills you're consciously trying to build, the hours you put into your business or your job or whatever. It's everything you directly control.
Exactly. That's your input. And unfair advantages, well, that's basically everything else. It's the circumstances, maybe traits you were born with, the situations you just find yourself in that make reaching a specific goal easier for you compared to someone else starting from a different place.
Okay.
And a really critical point the source makes, again and again, is that everyone has some unfair advantages.
Yeah.
Maybe not the obvious ones like tons of money.
Right.
But you have others. The real key is figuring out what they are, recognizing them.
So it shifts the focus. Instead of just comparing yourself to, say, Evan Spiegel and what you don't have, it's about identifying the unique mix that you do have.
Precisely. The book talks about finding your path of least resistance. Now, that doesn't mean avoiding hard work at all. It's about aligning your effort, your fair play, with your unique unfair advantages to find the most, effective route forward for you.
Okay, this is where it gets practical. How do we even start identifying these things in ourselves? The source gives us a framework, right? Use the acronym MILES.
Yeah, MILES. It's the book's way of categorizing the 5 main types of unfair advantages. It gives you a kind of lens to look at your own situation.
All right, let's break down MILES then, letter by letter. First up, M is for money. This feels like the big obvious one.
It is pretty obvious, yeah. And the source doesn't downplay how significant it can be. Having access to money, especially early on,
Hmm.
It provides an incredible cushion.
A buffer.
Exactly. For a startup, it could mean surviving that often long, lean period before you actually make any revenue, or being able to invest to scale up quickly, try things out, even afford to make some mistakes. It also just opens doors to expensive education or specialized training that can give you a real knowledge advantage.
So thinking back to Spiegel again, I mean, he clearly had intelligence, drive, but having capital from day one was just a huge head start, wasn't it?
Undeniably.
Someone else could have had the exact same idea, but without that financial backing, they'd face a totally different, much steeper climb. Money just removes a massive barrier to entry.
Absolutely. Okay, so next. Intelligence is for intelligence and insight. And this is interesting because, like you said, intelligence isn't just one thing. The source really breaks it down.
Yeah, I like this bit. It's not just about IQ scores, is it?
No, not at all. I mean, general IQ is part of the picture, sure. But they also talk about book intelligence.
Yeah.
You know, being good at learning from texts, formal education. Then there's street intelligence, which is more about navigating social situations, reading people, dealing effectively with the real world. Creative intelligence, generating new ideas, thinking differently. And finally, insight, which is maybe less about raw processing power and more about deep understanding, seeing beneath the surface, grasping complex situations, spotting connections others miss.
That distinction feels really important. You might not have aced school, the book intelligence part, but maybe you have incredible street smarts or you're just really creative.
Exactly. The source mentions the Stripe founders, the Collison brothers. Their exceptional scientific and technical intelligence gave them a clear, undeniable advantage in building something as complex as Stripe.
A definite edge.
So the question for you listening isn't just, am I smart? It's more like, which type of intelligence might be one of my strengths, my advantage?
Okay, good question to ponder. Next letter. L is for location and luck. Let's start with location. How does that play in?
Well, simply where you are physically can make a huge difference. It can open doors or close them just based on proximity. The source uses Silicon Valley as the classic example, right?
Yeah.
Just being there gives you access to this whole ecosystem, tech talent, specific knowledge, investors looking for tech ideas, a certain culture. It's incredibly hard to replicate that somewhere else. Your environment really shapes your opportunities.
Makes sense. Right place, right time. But what about luck? That feels totally out of our control, just random chance.
The source does acknowledge that element of uncontrollability.
Yeah.
Sometimes it refers to tawfiq, which is like divine grace or, well, luck. But crucially, it argues you can actually take actions to increase your chances of getting lucky. Think of it like increasing the surface area where good luck can find you.
Okay, how? How do you actually make yourself luckier? Sounds counterintuitive.
Well, the source suggests 4 main ways. 1, simply working harder. More effort means you encounter more potential opportunities statistically.
Right.
2, expand your network. Meet more people, make more connections. That increases the chances someone connects you to a lucky break.
Okay.
3, market yourself and your projects. Make yourself visible. So when an opportunity does pop up, people actually think of you.
Ah, yeah.
And 4, share your work. Put it out there. Get feedback. Collaborate. That can lead to unexpected doors opening just from the interaction.
So it's less about passively waiting for lightning to strike and more about, putting up more lightning rods, positioning yourself better.
That's a great way to put it.
I like that. Okay, next up. E is for education and experience.
Right. So education from a prestigious institution can offer an initial advantage, a degree from a big-name university.
Yeah.
It can open some doors early on, purely based on reputation or the network you build there.
But the source emphasizes something else even more, doesn't it? Beyond just the name on the diploma.
Absolutely. It really stresses that while formal education is helpful, experience is often the more significant practical advantage. Real-world, hands-on experience in your field gives you practical know-how, intuition, credibility, stuff that classrooms often just can't replicate. Someone who's actually done the job for years usually has a big edge over someone with only theoretical knowledge.
Yeah, that makes sense. Okay, finally, S is for status. Now, this sounds pretty straightforward, like being famous or having a high profile.
That's definitely part of it, but the source breaks it down into 2 types, which is quite useful. There's external social status, which is that reputation, how others see you, your standing in your industry or society.
Okay.
And then there's internal status, which is about how you see yourself, your self-worth, your confidence, your belief in your own abilities.
Gotcha. So Elon Musk, massive external status, right? The source mentions that when he starts any new venture, it instantly gets global attention, credibility, just because his name is on it. That's a huge unfair advantage.
A massive one, yeah. His existing status gives him an immediate platform.
Mm.
But, and this is the really encouraging part, if you don't have that kind of external status, which, let's face it, most people don't, especially starting out, the book really focuses on internal status as something you absolutely can build and cultivate yourself.
How do you do that? How do you build up that internal belief, especially if you're starting from, well, zero?
The source lays out about 4 key areas. First, work on developing your personality holistically, become more well-rounded, improve communication, build strong ethics.
Okay.
Second, actively work on boosting your self-confidence. Small wins, positive self-talk, that kind of thing. Third, learn practical skills like understanding body language, emotional intelligence. These help you present yourself effectively, market your ideas.
Right, how you carry yourself.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And fourth, and this is so important, address and manage imposter syndrome. You know, that feeling that you're a fraud, not really capable, even when there's evidence you are. Believing in yourself is basically the fuel needed to actually use any other advantage you might have.
That makes so much sense. You could have all the external stuff lined up, but if you don't internally believe you can make it work,
It's not going to get you very far.
no. Which brings us kind of neatly to what the source calls the foundation underneath all of this. Underneath Miles, your mindset.
Ah, yes, the base layer.
Yeah.
Absolutely crucial. The source touches on mindset research, references people like Carol Dweck, fixed versus growth mindsets,
Right.
but it adapts it into something it calls the realistic growth mindset. And this is positioned as the ideal mindset for really identifying and using your unfair advantages, especially if you're facing tough circumstances or don't have those obvious starting advantages.
So what does a realistic growth mindset actually look like? How does it work?
It's about finding a very specific balance. On one hand, you need self-awareness, like a really clear-eyed understanding of where you are right now,
Yeah.
your circumstances, your limitations, maybe the advantages you don't have. No illusions,
Okay, realism.
but, and this is critical, you have to pair that awareness with self-belief. Having high aspirations, ambitious goals, and a deep faith in your own ability to learn, adapt, and ultimately succeed despite the hurdles.
So it's not about pretending challenges don't exist, but it's also not about getting totally paralyzed by them either. It's like, keep your feet on the ground, but your head in the sky.
That's a perfect way to describe it, yes. You acknowledge the reality, but you don't let it kill your ambition or your belief that you can find a way. And this mindset is basically non-negotiable. Without it, identifying your Miles advantages is just, well, an interesting thought exercise. You won't have the drive or the confidence to put in the fair play, the effort needed to actually make them work for you.
Wow. Okay, this has been a seriously insightful deep dive. It really does change how you might think about success. It's not just effort.
No.
It's effort multiplied by these often unseen unfair advantages.
We've walked through that Miles framework: money, intelligence and insight, location and luck, education and experience, and status. It's a practical tool, really, for spotting these in yourself and maybe understanding them in others, too.
And we've anchored it all in that essential foundation, the realistic growth mindset, that balance of self-awareness and self-belief.
Yeah, and just understanding these ideas can genuinely shift your perspective, I think. It moves you away from feeling potentially down about what others seem to have and towards recognizing and empowering yourself with the unique mix you possess, knowing your own unfair advantages, nurturing that realistic belief. That's what lets you find your best path forward, even when things seem really tough.
It's a really powerful lens for looking at your own journey, isn't it? So maybe to leave you with something to chew on after this deep dive, if you were to honestly try and pinpoint just one unfair advantage you currently have, maybe it's something you've never even thought of as an advantage before. How might just understanding that specific thing fundamentally change how you approach your next big goal?
Really sit with that question.
That's all for this deep dive. We really hope you found these insights valuable.